Hi friendly friends, how are you today? It's Deanna here, and today I am actually here for a fun little tutorial. So have you ever seen a pattern or just a picture of something that it's color blocked and you're like, that looks fabulous, but I have no idea how to color block. That looks really hard. Well, let me tell you something, color blocking is really not that hard. So today we're going to take a pattern, a solid pattern, and we're gonna color block it. And I'm gonna show you just how easy it is to do it. So let's get to it. So I'm sure I'm not the only one this happens to. Here I am sitting on my phone, scrolling through, and all of a sudden, that is gorgeous. I bet I can make that. So I thought about, what pattern can I use to make this? And as of right now, I can't think of a pattern that I like more the fit of, the looseness of the fit than the oversized tee. And I'm like, the fit of that top would be so gorgeous with the fit of this because I want it to be oversized. So I said, can we color block it? We're gonna try it. So let's do it together. I'm gonna show you just exactly how I'm going to do this. The first thing to do is to make another pattern. So I'm gonna grab my pattern piece that I'm using. This is my oversized tee. This is the pattern that I'm gonna be using. And I'm gonna trace it over another piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and fold my paper in half, so on the fold, so that way, because my pattern piece is on the fold, so that way when I open it up, I'll have a whole pattern piece together. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. All right, so I am making the crew neck option. So that's the option that I cut out. But obviously you cut out whatever option you're making. I am not color blocking the back, so I'm only doing this to the front. But if you're doing it to both, then you would repeat it on both, changing the necklines. All right, now here is my top, and it is placed right here on my mat. Now, the first thing I want to do on this pattern, I like the fact that it is higher up, that the color blocking just goes on the top part. The really cool thing about the oversized tee is that it has a cropped length. So I'm going to put it over my pattern piece and mark that cropped length where that hits. Make sure I mark it right. That way I know that that is where I wanted my color blocking to go. Wherever you want your color blocking to go to, you would go to that. Or if you just want a straight color block, then you're gonna color block the whole thing, whatever. It is up to you. Then I'm gonna start drawing my lines, and I've got a ruler. Honestly, it really does not matter how you wanna cut it. If you don't even want a ruler and you're just gonna hand draw it, whatever, that's fine. It's just gonna be a little bit tougher to sew the two pieces together because that is eventually what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pattern piece, and you know what? I'm gonna draw a line right here where I want it to end. So I'm trying to make a like a dress. So this pattern has a tunic version. I'm probably gonna make it a little bit longer than the tunic. I'm not really sure how it's gonna turn out because it is a loose fitting top, but I know the color blocking will be fine. But I want the color blocking to just be on the top part of the pattern. So that's why I'm drawing this line. So now we're gonna go ahead and draw in our color blocking, however you wanna color block this pattern. I wanna color block it a crisscross pattern. So one is gonna go up and then another one's gonna come down kind of. So I'm gonna go up to whatever piece, wherever I want it to color block at, wherever I want it to end. And then I'm gonna come back and do the other side. Does that make sense? I hope it does. All right, upon inspecting the picture that I wanna do, the pattern I wanna recreate, it's got kind of a rounded curve right here. So I'm going to use this rounded edge. It's a curved edge ruler to give me that roundedness that I would like. So I'm gonna start by going from that corner and drawing like little lines. I'm not gonna draw my line yet. I'm just gonna kind of see how this takes me. And obviously you can be as precise as you would like with your cuts, if you want it to be, how precise you want it to be, where you want it to end, how much you want it to look like, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, whatever that look is. Okay, so I'm good right here. I'm just gonna go ahead and round it off and go all the way down. All right, so that's kind of rounded right here. You can kind of, if I want it more rounded, give it more of a round edge right here. Again, this is up to your liking. I like to do things kind of freehand a lot of times, but if you're one of those that wants it to be just so, you can do that. So I'm just kind of drawing where I think I want my lines to be. And then the other color blocking, I want it to come this way. So this is gonna be my color blocked area. So I'm coming this way. All right, so this is what's gonna be my top. This is gonna be a one color, color A, color B, and then this bottom part is going to be my color C. So when I cut this, I'm going to omit this line right here. That's just where I want it to stop, but except for these two edges right here. So I'm gonna cut that one and ends right here. So it's gonna go up, down, and over. I'm gonna go ahead and cut those out. All right, now I've got my 3 pattern pieces, A, B, and C. I'm gonna put C away because C doesn't really matter too much right now to me. I wanna color block these 2 pieces right here. All right, so there are 2 ways of doing this next step. And you all know I like to do the easy way. So everything else already has a seam allowance because my pattern came with a seam allowance. Shoulder, side seams, all those things have a seam allowance already. But because I split these 2 together and I'm gonna sew them back together, I need to have a seam allowance right here. So you're gonna have to add a seam allowance to this pattern. What you can do is you can grab another piece of paper, put your pattern piece on top, and redraw your pattern by adding a 1/4 inch seam allowance or a 1/2 inch, depending on how much seam allowance you want to give it. So you will draw that seam allowance in and do it that way. Or, as I usually do, because I like to do things the easy way, or so I think it's the easy way for me, I'm just going to go ahead and grab my fabric. I'm using this gorgeous, this is actually French terry. I wanted to use like either double brush poly or cotton lycra, but I didn't have enough, so I'm gonna use French terry, which I love anyway, so I'm good with that. I'm gonna place my pattern piece over my French terry. Move it over a little bit so it fits. All right, and then like I said, our side, our arm side, our shoulder, our neckline, they all already have seam allowances, so we don't have to worry about that. It's right here, this curved that we added, we need to add that seam allowance, okay? So I'm going to grab my rotary cutter, and I'm just gonna cut the pieces that I don't really need to do anything with, so that's out of the way. Oof, I really need to sharpen or get a new rotary cutter blade. It's very dull. If you watch my sewing tutorials, you're probably like, it's always dull. It is. I sew so much and I can't keep up with my blades. I feel like I'm always changing blades. Okay, now once that's cut out, you know, you can do that first or second, doesn't matter. We're gonna cut the bottom piece, this area right here. And I'm going to add the seam allowance as I'm cutting it. Because when we sew them together, we wanna have that seam allowance. I'm just adding a 1/4 inch seam allowance because that's how much seam I usually leave when I'm sewing. That's how much seam I usually eat. But if you wanna add a 1/2 inch, if you that's how much you usually add, you can do that. It's up to you. So I'm just putting my ruler right up to it and going to a 1/4 inch. And adding that 1/4 inch. Now, as you can see, it all has that 1/4 inch seam allowance right there. You can see that really well. See that? Okay, now this is my one piece is already cut out. So now I'm gonna do the same for my next piece. I'm using white for this one. I don't think it's gonna fit in here, but maybe. Oh, it does fit in here. Look at that. All right, so now for this piece, oops, it goes this way. Remember to keep that grain line. Okay, for this piece right here, we know that we already have the seam allowance at the side. We have the seam allowance at the arm side. We have the seam allowance at the shoulder. So we need to add the seam allowance here at the top where it's connecting to the other one, and seam allowance at the bottom where it's gonna connect to the skirt, because we split that bottom part as well. Now, like I said, I don't bother so much about the bottom piece because that's gonna kind of match up. But if you want it to match up evenly, you wanna make sure that you're adding that right here too. So I'm cutting away the one that already has seam allowance just as normal. And then I'm gonna add my seam allowance to the pieces that I am going to be attaching to my top. And my ruler, it's gonna be this way because it's the other way, and it's kind of, this one's the other way. All right, so however you want to do it, 1/2 inch, little tiny itty bitty increments at a time. You're probably looking at me saying, there's an easier way to do this. Yeah, there is. It's called winging it. Probably not good. Probably not the good way to do it. A lot of times the way that I usually do it. All right, so there's my 1/4 inch up there, and now I'm gonna do the same for down here, 1/4 inch. And 1/4 inch right here. All right, now we've cut out both of our color blocked pieces. And we'll do the same for the bottom piece. When I cut that out, when I cut my V right here that's gonna attach, at this part up here, I'll give it a 1/4 inch seam allowance to attach it. Next is putting together our color blocked pieces. So I've got my top color blocked piece and I've got my bottom color block piece, and I'm gonna place them just how they're gonna go. So this is how they're gonna end up, just like that, right? And so now I'm gonna grab their right sides up, both of them, and I'm gonna grab, oh, I just dropped all my bobbins on the floor. I'll get those later. All right, now I'm gonna grab one of them. I usually do the smaller one, and I'm gonna flip it up over that seam. Over that raw edge, I mean, not seam. And I'm gonna go ahead and pin it. Or clip it, whatever it is that you do. You don't pull, you don't do anything. You're just gonna go right on there because we're just going to sew it together. And you have that seam allowance already. Once you sew it, you'll have your top ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over to my sewing machine, sew this up, and then actually I'm gonna go ahead and cut my other piece, adding the seam allowance. Then I'm gonna sew this up, and then we'll come back and sew the bottom piece. But actually the bottom piece is a gathered piece. If you were making straight, you would make it straight. Since I'm making a gathered piece, I'm gonna have to add to it. I wanna add a double to it so I can gather it. So it's a little bit different. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that. We're just gonna go over this piece right here. All right, our color blocked piece is put together. Now we give it a good steam, and a lot of people, I do sometimes as well. Since this is a dressy one, I probably won't, but it also helps if you want to go ahead and top stitch that piece. My iron was not hot all the way, and my little stand leg was not up all the way, so that is why things are happening. Anyway, okay, so now for the bottom piece, so as I said, I'm gonna put this away so I can tell you all about it. In the picture that I saw, it is a gathered bottom. Okay, so if you want to color block, this is exactly how you color block. And now what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna try to make that gathered bodice. There's different ways that you can add that gathering, and obviously you can add as much gathering as you want. Do you want it to be as gathered as possible or just a little gathering? This is up to you. So here's my pattern piece. And to gather, I'm going to add like double this pattern piece. So this is half of it. So I'm going to go double this way and double that way. So then when I gather, it comes in and that gives me that effect, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I can either go ahead and redraw this pattern, or I can go ahead and just kind of split it so it goes out and add pretty much another piece of this. That sounds very hard, doesn't it? What I'm going to do, and this might not be the way that everyone does it, that's fine, is I'm gonna give it cuts. And you can go ahead and label the cuts, that way you know exactly what they are. And I'm going to separate the cuts and put them into one big piece. Because it's not the same on both sides, if it was the same on both sides, if it was a straight line, then you can just do this and add a half of it. So cut this on the fold and that will give you double the width. But I have a pattern piece that has a pointy right here, so I can't really do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to split this pattern into different lines, and then I'm going to open them up so that I have the opening. I hope that makes sense to you. So that's what I'm gonna do next. Now, that's a little bit more of an advanced step. So if you're just here for the color block in front of it, congratulations. This is literally all you have to do. Now you use this as your front piece and attach the back to it. And you're done. Like literally all you have to do is add a seam allowance, and that's how you color block. Now if you wanted to close this up and not have a color block option, you would overlap your pattern, that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and cut around it, and that would omit the color block. And that's how I do a lot of my tops that are color block that I don't want to color block. Anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and start splitting this pattern, and we'll sew it up, and then I'm gonna show you just how it all ends up looking together. All right, so here's what is pretty much my half right here. So I kind of cut it and marked it right here because I want it to be just as much width on this side as it is on this side. So I want to keep that in mind right there. All right, I am going about 3 inches apart. I figured like this is how wide these pieces are. So like 3 inches here, so I add, I don't know, I think it needs to be a little bit wider for more gathering. It just depends on how much gathering you want to give it. I think this is going to be fine. I don't want a whole lot of gathering, so I'm going to do this. Now remember, I'm adding a 1/4 inch seam allowance up here, and since I wanted the tunic length at the bottom, I'm going to add a whole lot more length at the bottom. And then the other side, the back side, I'm just gonna fold it, and I'm gonna cut it, the top part, I'm gonna cut it just on the fold regular, and then the bottom part, I'm going to cut across straight, because the back is gonna go straight, and I'm going to, so like through this line right here, straight is where I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna do double that, so it will be the width, double the width. All right, let's cut this. I know y'all are probably thinking, what is she doing now? I am just folding the fabric in half so that way it can guide me on my cut, my straight cut here, up here. Because this is a thinner fabric, I can see my lines on my cutting mat. So, because I'm adding this much, double the length for my bottom. So this is the top peak, This is where my tunic length ends, and I'm adding this much length to it to have seam allowance to be able to hem. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, here at the top, I'm going to gather this top, put in a gathering stitch, just a long basting stitch, and I'm gonna gather the width of my bodice. And I'm going to attach it. I think it's gonna be adorable. All right, I'm cutting the back at that short length that I cut the front at. Everything else stays the same as my pattern piece I have because I'm not color blocking the back, I'm only color blocking the front. Okay, and then the bottom part, I am going to grab my fabric, and it's going to be double this width, okay? And so what I can do is, I already cut up my pattern piece, so I could cut it up again. It's up to you, or you can make another pattern piece because it's gonna be double this width. So there's one. One. Here's would be one, and here would be two. So it's double right there. The measurements don't have to be just precise because of the fact that it's just a gathered piece, so it will gather nicely, it'll be fine. So then this is where I'm cutting my to end. You could have actually left this little piece in there too, it'll just add to the gathering. Obviously make sure the top is straight. And this is gonna be our back of our dress. So I will gather this back and attach it to my back panel. Wherever I place that. Here. Oh no, that's not my back panel. I'll find it. Here it is. We will gather the width of this panel and attach it. All right, I don't know if you could tell, I went and stopped here at the top and gathered this way, and then I gather this way as well. That way I have, here's the top, and then I have two ways to go with my gathering. So I'm gonna go ahead and gather this side, the width of this side. So go all the way up here and make sure it's gathered. And you can also do this gathering with clear elastic, which might be a good thing to give you some stability depending on how heavy your bottom is. But I just went with the long straight stitch method. All right, so there is gathered one side, and then I'm gonna do the same for the other side. Making sure those gathers are even. All right, so now what we're going to do is we can flip this bodice and we're going to attach them right sides together. This time, since it's just one piece, I'm going to fold it and I'm going to mark my half so I know exactly where my half is. I usually do that for my skirt as well, but this time I forgot to, so that's okay. I'm just going to kind of, oh, I think this is my half right here. I see my little crease. So that's good. And then I'm gonna gather this to fit. Now we're gonna match them right sides together and sew them. All right, friends, it's coming along. Now I just gotta take that stitching off, that basting stitch off, steam it so it looks nice and even. That's why it looks so uneven, because of the stitching. I've got my back and my front ready. I'm going to go ahead and cut out my sleeves and my neckband, and then continue the pattern as I would my regular pattern. So the shoulders, sew the sleeve on, do the neckline, sew the sides, hem, and we'll be done. So let me do all that, and I'll show you the end result. I'm so excited. All right, friends, we are finished. How cute is this dress? This is my oversized dress dream. I love it. I love the fit of it. Remember, I used the oversized tee because I wanted a loose fitting dress, super comfy. But if you wanted the same effect with a slimmer fit, you can use another pattern such as the Fall in Love, or something that has the fit that you like. And the color blocking was super easy. Let me know below what you think about the color blocking, how easy that was. Was it easier than you thought? I know I threw in a little bit of a curveball when I threw in the gather bodice, the gather bottom, I'm sorry, and you were probably like, oh, that's a lot of work. But the color blocking itself was so easy, and it turned out so cute. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't, so you never miss any of our tutorials. Come find us on Facebook and Instagram, where people are sharing their makes, and you can share your makes with us because we want to be inspired by you. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you all next time.